Friends to enemies. It's a story as old as time. You grow up thinking somebody's gonna be your best friend for life, only for them to turn into a murderous sociopath who's a borderline terrorist. It happens all the time. It happened to me. I know it happened to you. And that's probably why it happens in anime so often, because it's such an everyday experience. We all have a friend in Guantanamo Bay. Right? Okay, so it's never that intense, but it certainly is always that intense in anime, as it felt as though for about 15 years in anime and manga that if two characters were introduced in the beginning as friends, that eventually they would be enemies. Griffith and Berserk, Naruto and Sasuke, Jiraiya and Orochimaru, because there's something that just hits about two characters who grew up side by side with each other, failing to understand each other more and more as they got older, and eventually falling out. Now, that kind of thing does happen all the time in the real world. It's usually not because one of them is trying to crack the code on all of the world's knowledge and is therefore relying on human experimentation, or because they want to kill their brother so bad they're willing to undergo any possible means and join a terrorist organization to, finally get to that brother. But that's what fictional stories do. They take things that we understand at the core and trump them up to a level that we would find interesting. Because while reading about two friends falling out of their friendship is interesting, it's way more interesting when they have lightning hands. At least for my 4th grade brain. Now in the real world, when you fall out of a friendship with somebody, that's usually it. There's just one day that you usually don't realize the last time you ever see a person. It's called aging. However, in the anime world, the last time that you're gonna see that friend that you fell out with is when either you take their lives or they take yours. However, unfortunately, that's not always the case. See, while people like Griffith and Berserk and Naruto and Sasuke get their big battles, there are some friends to enemies that unfortunately never do. And possibly the most egregious example of this is Jiraiya and Orochimaru, 2 out of the 3 legendary Sannin. 2 characters that perfectly resembled Naruto and Sasuke in their upbringing in Konoha and the downfall that led to their separation. Tied off with a little neat bow that both Naruto and Sasuke went to Orochimaru and Jiraiya respectively to be trained so that they could be better killing each other. Something that ironically Jiraiya and Orochimaru never got to get around to. But just because Jiraiya and Orochimaru never got to have their big emotional final battle does not mean that people don't wonder what would have happened if they did. And in fact, a hypothetical battle between Orochimaru and Jiraiya is one of the most hotly debated things in the entirety of the Naruto fandom. And thus it's actually kind of a wonder that I haven't gotten around to discussing it yet. Because really, no matter how you look at it, this battle could go either way. While a battle between Naruto and Sasuke for a long time appeared as though it was a coin flip, with many people believing in early Shippuden that Sasuke was much stronger than Naruto, we eventually got our answer by the end of Shippuden about who was stronger, and it was Naruto. However, one could absolutely argue that Naruto doesn't become stronger than Sasuke until he gets KCM 2. And quite honestly, I'd probably agree with you there, as Sasuke's final upgrade, pre-Hagoromo that is, happens long before the 4th Great Shinobi World War, while Naruto's doesn't happen until the 4th Great Shinobi World War. Now obviously Sasuke gets a 6-Tome Rinnegan, and Naruto gets ninja Jesus powers, but they get those simultaneously. But we've never gotten that complete 100% undeniable piece of proof like we got for Naruto and Sasuke for Jiraiya and Orochimaru. And unfortunately, because of Jiraiya's current status at the bottom of an ocean, we never will. That is, until today. Because I've done the reading, I've done the analysis, and boy oh boy, do I have an answer. Which is why today we're talking Jiraiya versus Orochimaru. But before we get to this hypothetical beatdown, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. If you like the idea of me doing hypothetical battles between fictional characters who will never meet, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about hypothetical battles from Naruto and Boruto, I talk hypothetical battles from all other anime and manga. Or if you just like the idea of me being in a very real battle every week, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you guys want to look like you're invested in who wins in hypothetical fights between anime characters, go ahead and meander on over into my anime merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, the snake versus the toad, a story much older than some of you realize, as every single one of the legendary Sannin are based off characters from a monogatari from the 1500s. Yes, that's right, the legendary Sannin are based off one of the oldest kept books in all of Japanese history, The Legend of the Gallant Jiraiya, in which a mountain sage with toad abilities and the ability to talk to and summon toads, alongside his his wife named Tsunade, who's a princess with slug abilities, battle against an evil character known by Orochimaru, who has snake abilities and can summon and talk to snakes. So really, when it comes down to it, this battle between Jiraiya and Orochimaru is 500 years in the making. Well, that might sound really impressive. Indra battling against Asuras is one of the core tenets of Buddhism, and Buddhism is thousands of years old. So there's a lot of really old fights in Naruto. In Buddhism, Indra's the good guy. But we're not talking about the 500-year-old battle between Jiraiya the Gallant and Orochimaru. We're talking about their later interpretations in Naruto. Two characters that were raised side by side with each other in Team Hiruzen. A child genius orphan brought in and raised by Hiruzen in hopes that he could be the Hokage one day, and a screw-up who found his footing, who rejected being the Hokage 4 times. Two of the most powerful people in Konoha's history who started out as best friends and ended as mortal enemies. And while they would scuffle a couple of times throughout Naruto's story, they never truly got the one-on-one battle they deserved. But if they did, who would come out victorious? Well, before we answer that question, we have to set the stage. We have to talk about our two participants. We have to talk about their feats, how strong they were, the advantages and disadvantages they would have in battle. And then only after we've shown just how powerful each of our participants are and the abilities that they have, can we truly begin to tackle the topic of who would win. And since on this channel we believe they them's first, the first person we're going to be talking about is Orochimaru. And see, it's important to note here before we get into anything actually, that we're not going to be talking about Boruto Orochimaru. I mean, to give Orochimaru's 16 additional years of evolution after Jiraiya's death just doesn't feel fair. Because genuinely, if we were talking about Boruto Orochimaru versus Jiraiya, it's not necessarily close. While we haven't seen a ton from Boruto Orochimaru, they have gotten substantially stronger. And thus I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that Orochimaru in Boruto is stronger than the strongest version of Jiraiya. Now, if you want to talk about Boruto Orochimaru versus Kashin Koji, that's a different conversation. So the real question becomes, what version of Orochimaru are we going to talk about? Well, it's kinda tough, because you could really go one of two ways. You could say that the version of Orochimaru that battled against Hiruzen is the closest version that we get to Jiraiya's peak strength, as after Orochimaru's battle against Hiruzen, he loses the usage of his arms. On top of this, they're beginning to approach the 3-year limit in their vessel, which is why they're looking for Kibimaru and Sasuke and really anybody with enough power to make a perfect vessel. And thus, even though this weakened version of Orochimaru coexisted with the version of Jiraiya that we all know and love, to compare these two versions wouldn't do Orochimaru justice. However, the second option might be unfair to Jiraiya, because the second option for Orochimaru's form would be the form that he acquires in the beginning of the 4th Great Shinobi World War. That is to say, after they're reincarnated by Itachi to use Edo Tensei to bring the Hokages back to life. Now, the reason that this might be unfair is because this version of Orochimaru is using a white Zetsu as a vessel, which means that this version of Orochimaru has a Hashirama cell boost, as the white Zetsu were created using Hashirama cells, meaning that more likely than not, this Orochimaru has access to things like wood release and crazy regeneration, though during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, they may not have been aware of that. And thus we're left with kind of a weird quandary, because technically if we take the white Zetsu version, that's after Jiraiya's death, so that would still be giving Orochimaru a leg up in terms of time to evolve. But if we take the version of Orochimaru that battled against Hiruzen, we're ignoring all the progress that Orochimaru makes in terms of their research during Naruto's timeline. But since the only thing that we've ever seen Orochimaru really get out of being a white Zetsu vessel is the fact that they no longer have to switch bodies, as white Zetsu doesn't have a will that's battling against Orochimaru and it doesn't decay since it has the rapid regeneration ability of Hashirama cells, I think genuinely taking Orochimaru at the beginning of the 4th Great Shinobi World War is the safest version of them that we could use in a battle against Jiraiya. And thus, any feats accomplished during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, I'm not going to take into account. We're going to assume for the circumstances of today's video that the first thing that Orochimaru has to do after being brought back by Sasuke is battle against Jiraiya, which is a great reason to bring somebody back to life if you ask me. So how strong is that version of Orochimaru? Presuming he still gets to cut open the Shinigami stomach and get his arms back. Well, let's go over what Orochimaru was able to accomplish up until that point and their stats. Chronologically, one of the first things that we ever see Orochimaru accomplish is that during the 2nd Great Shinobi World War, they're able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Hanzo the Salamander, a man who was said to be stronger than all of the legendary Sannin combined. And while the legendary Sannin were the people who led an army of Konoha shinobi into the Hidden Rain, by the end, only the legendary Sannin were left standing. Now, technically, this feat doesn't mean all that much because Jiraiya was there as well, but it's still impressive nonetheless. But this feat is a little bit more impressive for Orochimaru because Orochimaru was deemed by Hiruzen in their battle to be the strongest of their generation. As Hiruzen, while thinking about the past that he had with Orochimaru, said that Orochimaru was the kind of genius that only comes around every couple of decades. And Hiruzen wasn't the only person who had good things to say about Orochimaru, as Hashirama, when he's brought back by Orochimaru a second time, praises Orochimaru for being such an outstanding shinobi. And pretty much everybody on Earth is aware of how much of a threat Orochimaru is, as even the Akatsuki, one of the most feared criminal organizations in all of Naruto, saw Orochimaru as a legitimate threat. And dedicated a fair amount of resources to trying to kill him whenever they had the opportunity, as Deidara's pretty much sole mission outside of collecting Jinchuriki was trying to kill Orochimaru. And the craziest bit about the Akatsuki fearing Orochimaru is that while they were fearing him, he was in a weakened state. Being weakened never really affected Orochimaru in any way that mattered, as Orochimaru, while deeply ill and without the usage of their arms, was not only able to compete against both of his fellow Sannin when it came to blows early on in Naruto, but was also able to battle against a four-tail version 2 cloak version of Naruto, going so far as to stop one of his tailed beast bombs with their triple Rashomon gates. And all of this fear garnered towards the mere mention of Orochimaru's name was justified. Orochimaru has one of the largest chakra reserves out of anybody in Naruto, and is also one of the most foremost geniuses when it comes to the molding of said chakra. Now, some people don't believe this to be true because Orochimaru wasn't able to undergo Snake Sage mode, but the reason that Orochimaru wasn't able to undergo Snake Sage mode was the frailty of their body, as there's 3 necessary attributes that one needs to have to undergo Sage mode: an insane amount of chakra, an insane amount of chakra control, and a strong body. Orochimaru only has 2 of these. But this doesn't mean that Orochimaru doesn't have Sage-like abilities, as Orochimaru can not only absorb chakra from somebody else's body through physical contact, which not only gives them chakra, but also the skills and knowledge of the person they're absorbing chakra from, but also has such precise chakra control that even without the usage of their arms, they're still able to use things like ninjutsu. And if you can't use your arms, that means no hand signs. And on top of this, even without the full usage of their arms, Orochimaru was able to stun a 4-tailed Naruto with a punch. And taijutsu isn't even Orochimaru's specialty, but you better believe they're incredible at it, as Orochimaru has also gone toe-to-toe with a Sharingan amped Sasuke and won in a taijutsu bout. And the reason that Orochimaru was able to throw this punch in the first place is because after Orochimaru lost their arms, they were able to switch into a new body. But switching bodies isn't the only body modification that Orochimaru does. In fact, Orochimaru kind of acts like a Los Santos Customs for their own body. Because as a reminder, Orochimaru wants 2 things: the perfect body and immortality. And honestly, relatable, which led Orochimaru to make a myriad of changes to their body, which has given them things like a healing ability, as Orochimaru is able to regenerate from injuries at a superhuman pace. However, should Orochimaru sustain an injury that they're unable to recover from, they have the Orochimaru-style body replacement technique that allows Orochimaru to regurgitate from their old injured body a completely new and healed body, kind of like a snake shedding its skin. And wow, this sounds incredibly broken, because wow, every single time Orochimaru ever gets fatally injured, they can just make a new body. This technique does require a massive amount of chakra, so Orochimaru can't really do this technique and then continue fighting. But it does basically mean that Orochimaru at any given moment has at least 2 lives. On top of this, Orochimaru is able to manipulate their body basically however they want. That is to say that Orochimaru is able to extend their neck or their arms or their legs. And these body modifications have also massively increased Orochimaru's durability, as Orochimaru has taken 2 point-blank punches from 100 Seals enhanced Tsunade and lived to tell the story, and while it injured them enough that they needed to retreat, still pulling that off is massively impressive when you consider the fact that Tsunade, through the power of 100 Seals kick, was able to crack Madara Susanoo ribcage. On top of this, Orochimaru has also taken a point-blank Shira Tensei from the Deva Path, took a point-blank blow to the face from a 1-tailed Naruto, and was able to stop a version 2 4-tailed Naruto's tailed beast bomb. However, Orochimaru did say if that tailed beast bomb were to hit them, that they would have died. And so that gives us an interesting little look into the possible durability of Orochimaru, but we'll get back to that. But Orochimaru's body modifications have gone a lot further than just giving them the ability to regurgitate a new healed body, as Orochimaru's body modifications have essentially made their true body a giant white snake, which is essentially just hundreds, if not thousands of snakes, all making one bigger snake. And the blood of all of these snakes is poisonous. That is to say that the second this blood hits the air, it aerosolizes, and anybody who inhales that immediately gets frozen. In this form is how Orochimaru is able to switch bodies, specifically by using living corpse reincarnation. As Orochimaru enters this form, eats a new body, and then inhabits said body for at least 3 years. Here's the funny thing about living corpse reincarnation: anybody who Orochimaru consumes not only becomes their new vessel, but also Orochimaru gets access to any of the abilities of said new vessel, on top of all of the other abilities that they maintained from previous vessels. Orochimaru is essentially Kenjaku, or I guess Kenjaku was essentially Orochimaru. Oh, I just remembered something. Because Orochimaru was brought back to life using Kabuto's skin, this means the version of Orochimaru brought back during the 4th Great Shinobi World War comes back with all of the abilities that Kabuto stockpiled, which means when Orochimaru comes back during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he gets all of the Sound Village's 5 abilities and the abilities of Taka, which means he gets Sakon and Ukon's Kekigenkai, Jugo's clan's Kekigenkai, he gets Shikatsu Myaku, Hydrification, and Karin's Uzumaki Life Force and Healing ability. That can't be, no, that's not fair. We can't We can't say that form. Because here's the thing, that version of Orochimaru, the Orochimaru that has his arms and is now built out of Kabuto's flesh, is stronger than the Kabuto that battled against Itachi and Sasuke. And while the strength of that version of Kabuto is somewhat of a contentious topic, as obviously that version of Kabuto was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Itachi and Sasuke, but Itachi and Sasuke couldn't kill him, that is an insane boost for Orochimaru. Like, come on. I think we're all aware that Jiraiya doesn't win that battle. Not to mention that since he's almost entirely comprised of Hashirama cells, since he's now a white Zetsu vessel, their already superhuman healing abilities accelerated even further. They can perfectly shapeshift into anybody they want to, and they don't need nourishment anymore. Not to mention that during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, Orochimaru figures out self-healing technique, which allows them to heal all the injuries they have with 100% certainty. Which means, hypothetically, if you lose a leg, you do the hand signs or self-healing technique, and then boom, you got a new leg. You get poisoned, you do the hand signs for self-healing technique, you're no longer poisoned. This technique completely negates all physical ailments, returning the user to their original form in a matter of seconds. We can't give that to Orochimaru. It's unfair to Jiraiya. He didn't get a 4th Great Shinobi World War boost. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a quick reroute. We're gonna say the Orochimaru we're talking about is not the 4th Great Shinobi World War Orochimaru. We're talking about the Orochimaru that was killed by Sasuke, but with no illness and the usage of their arms. That's the fairest possible fight. Cool, we get on the new rules, bet. Let's move on to Orochimaru's ninjutsu. Orochimaru's knowledge of ninjutsu is probably the greatest out of any shinobi ever. The fact that Orochimaru was raised by Hiruzen, a man referred to as the Professor, as he learned all of the jutsu of the leaf, and Orochimaru's infinite quest for all of the knowledge in the universe, makes him becoming the most knowledgeable person on all things ninjutsu, genjutsu, senjutsu, and taijutsu. Not the craziest thing you've ever heard. I mean, Orochimaru was born a genius and was given the right circumstances to thrive. And because this, Orochimaru excels in any version of jutsu. Whether it be barrier ninjutsu, fuin jutsu, juin jutsu, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, senjutsu, clone techniques, medical ninjutsu, space-time ninjutsu. You best believe that Orochimaru is in the top 5. Not to mention Orochimaru is no scrub when it comes to the physical part of fighting, as Orochimaru is also an incredibly practiced Kenjutsu practitioner, as Orochimaru and their Sword of Kusanagi was able to go toe-to-toe against Hiruzen and his legendary extendable bow staff, a bow staff that was made of adamantite, mind you. And while adamantite is the hardest element in the Naruto universe, Monkey King Enma, who makes the adamantite staff, said that after going toe-to-toe with the blade of Kusanagi, that they would be severely bruised. Now, this is because the Sword of Kusanagi is said to be able to cut through anything, including the abdomen of your former teacher and kind of dad. Not to mention that Orochimaru is one of the very few people in Naruto that has the ability to use all 7 releases, those being the 5 basic elemental releases and yin and yang. But maybe the most prolific thing about Orochimaru is their summonings, as Orochimaru has access to a myriad of different snake summonings, whether they be Manda 2, or the 2-headed snake that Orochimaru summoned to destroy Konoha during the Konoha Crush arc. Orochimaru has access to some of the most terrifying summons we've ever seen. Tie that into the fact that Orochimaru also has the 8 branches technique, Orochimaru's strongest move, that turns Orochimaru into a massive 8-headed snake bigger than Manda, and you have a terrifying kaiju level opponent to go against. But those aren't even Orochimaru's worst summonings, as Orochimaru also has access to Edo Tensei, which allows Orochimaru really whenever they want to bring back some of the strongest ninjas in history to fight alongside them. And while since we're not talking about the reincarnated version of Orochimaru, and therefore their control over Edo Tensei isn't nearly as good as it is in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, as a large reason that Orochimaru was able to control people like Tobirama was the fact that his body was almost entirely Hashirama cells, this version of Orochimaru still has some incredibly impressive Edo Tensei feats, like summoning the 3rd Kazekage to battle against Sasori's 3rd Kazekage puppet. So all in all, Orochimaru's stats stack up like this. Attack potency wise, Orochimaru has a couple of really impressive feats, like being able to cut Tsunade multiple times even though he was suppressed, and Tsunade is way physically stronger than him. On top of this, while suppressed, he was able to go toe-to-toe with Sasori's 3rd Kazekage puppet. On top of this, prior to Sasuke killing him, even in his most suppressed state, he was still stronger than Kabuto, who referred to him as a monster. And that monster tag is justified because Orochimaru was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of a 4-tailed Naruto in that suppressed state. And while Orochimaru wasn't able to cut through Naruto's version 2 cloak, the fact that he was able to pressure a 4-tailed Naruto means that his attack potency level is somewhere around mountain to island. And that's corroborated when you consider the fact that even after Sasuke pulled the surprise feat on Orochimaru at Orochimaru's weakest, in Orochimaru's true form, he was able to pressure a version 2 curse mark version of Sasuke. Now tie that into the fact that we know this version of Orochimaru also had access to the 8 branches technique, as we're also considering the Orochimaru that battled against Itachi here, the second time that is, and therefore we can assume that Orochimaru with the 8 branches technique technique, no illness, and the usage of their arms is easily island level. Now, speed-wise, Boruto Orochimaru is relativistic, as Orochimaru in Naruto's most recent light novel is able to bang with a base version of Naruto, who is fast enough to dodge a photon laser beam in base. Photon laser beam obviously travels at the speed of light, but pretty much the only speed feat we have for Orochimaru is the fact that he was able to dodge heavy Sasuke while massively sick. So this version of Orochimaru is massively hypersonic plus. Now, durability-wise, we get to talk about what we were talking about earlier, as Orochimaru was able to survive a direct attack from one-tailed Naruto with little to no damage, which is probably a mountain-level feat. Tie this into the triple Rashomon gates and the 8 branches technique, and when you consider the fact that the triple Rashomon gates were able to stop a tailed beast bomb from a 4-tailed Naruto, this would tell us that Orochimaru's durability is at least island level. But how do they stack up against Jiraiya? Jiraiya is hailed as one of the most powerful shinobi that Konoha has ever created, which was cemented as fact when he was able to go toe-to-toe against the likes of Hanzo the Salamander. And it's a possibility that Jiraiya's famed power spanned even further than that of Orochimaru, as both Itachi and Kisame, when they came to Konoha, kind of to remind Danzo that Itachi was still alive, both individually admitted that if they were to battle against Jiraiya, they would at best reach a stalemate, which is a little compelling piece of evidence if you choose to believe it for a later on conversation. And when it comes to head-to-head competition, Jiraiya's got a leg up on Orochimaru in one regard, and that's that he was offered to be Hokage 3 times and would have been offered a 4th if he had survived his mission in the raid. Well, Orochimaru wasn't offered once, but Orochimaru would have said yes, so take that as you will. In fact, Jiraiya was so powerful that Kakashi, one of the strongest ninjas in the history of the Leaf, found the idea of him being defeated in a one-on-one absurd. And the man who defeated him in a one-on-one, Nagato, admitted that if Jiraiya understood how the Rinnegan worked, that they would have lost. There's also an interesting piece of information we're gonna keep in our wallet. Jiraiya also has something going for him that Orochimaru simply does not. See, there are 3 things that one needs to become a sage: a strong body, a ton of chakra, and precise chakra control. While Orochimaru only has 2 of those things, Jiraiya's got 3, and thus Jiraiya, unlike Orochimaru, is able to undergo sage transformation, though not perfect sage transformation. But that's not necessarily a bad thing for Jiraiya, because while Jiraiya is able to undergo sage transformation by himself, when he's truly getting very serious, he summons Fukakuzu and Shima, aka Ma and Pa, and welds them to his shoulders, so that they're able to pull in nature energy and turn it into Senjutsu chakra and pump it into his body while he fights, meaning that Jiraiya is one of the only sages ever to be able to fight and pull in nature chakra simultaneously. Really, only Hashirama and kind of Kabuto falling into that categorization. But because of this, Jiraiya also has another advantage. See, because Jiraiya is tapped into 2 other living beings whenever he enters the real version of his sage mode, this makes placing Jiraiya under Genjutsu next to impossible. 1, because Manpa would be able to disrupt his chakra flow and break him out of it, and 2, because being a sage at all pretty much makes you invulnerable to Genjutsu, as to enter sage mode, one needs incredibly precise chakra control, and you don't get placed under Genjutsu unless the person placing you under Genjutsu has more precise chakra control. When it comes down to ninjutsu, however, Jiraiya's a little less specialized than Orochimaru, but that's not to say that Jiraiya's ninjutsu is weaker than Orochimaru's, just the bag is a little shallower. See, Jiraiya usually uses toad-based ninjutsu, whether those be toad oil bombs, summoning a toad's esophagus around him to protect himself and trap those around him with him, or hiding himself in a target's shadow with his technique Toad Flatness, gives him complete control over his target's mind and body. It's kind of like the Naru shadow control technique, however, Jiraiya has to merge his body into somebody's shadow instead of grabbing their shadow with his own shadow. On top of this, like Orochimaru, Jiraiya is able to manipulate his body. See, while Orochimaru has the ability to extend their neck and arm and legs, Jiraiya has the ability to control the length and tensile strength of his hair, which he can either use to bind enemies, destroy enemies, or surround himself and defend himself. But maybe more impressively than anything, Jiraiya is able to use the Rasengan, and even the Big Ball Rasengan. And when he's in his Sage mode, the Ultra Big Ball Rasengan. Jiraiya is also an incredibly practiced practitioner of Fuinjutsu, as Jiraiya completely understands the workings of the 8 trigram seal. He can also use barrier ninjutsu, like his canopy method formation jutsu, that allows Jiraiya to detect any movement within the bubble that he creates. And really, when it comes down to it, in terms of offensive ninjutsu output, Jiraiya just has a leg up on Orochimaru, and that usually comes through his Sage mode amps, as his techniques like Sage Art Goemon, which has him, Mom, Pa releasing either wind style, toad oil, or fire all simultaneously to create one of the most explosive and dangerous fire release moves we've seen in all of Naruto, allowed him to go toe-to-toe with enemies of caliber that Orochimaru simply couldn't touch, like Nagato. However, where Jiraiya does falter is the durability category. See, because Jiraiya's only ever been brought to the brink of his death twice. twice, and that was from Naruto's four-tailed form and the monstrous strength of Tsunade. But considering the fact that those are two people that Orochimaru has fought against and has tanked shots from, it doesn't look super great for Jiraiya that those are the two times that he almost died, as Orochimaru was able to take full 2 strength punches from Tsunade, using her strength of 100 seal, mind you, which I seriously doubt she used on Jiraiya for peeping on her, and Orochimaru was able to stop a tailed beast ball from Four Tails Naruto. Now the difference here is that Orochimaru could retreat. Orochimaru wasn't responsible for trying to seal Naruto in his four-tail state, and thus using the fact that Jiraiya was brought to the brink of his death by Four Tails Naruto doesn't make a lot of sense. However, the fact that Jiraiya did almost die at the hands of Tsunade when Orochimaru was able to tank those shots is a little suspect. Really, when it comes down to it, Jiraiya just has better feats than Orochimaru. At least this version of Orochimaru. Because as it stands, Itachi and Kisame said that if they battled against Jiraiya, it would be a stalemate. And we know that Itachi is stronger than Orochimaru, because Itachi has beaten Orochimaru not once, but twice. Now, say what you will, Itachi Susanoo was perfectly suited for sealing the 8 branches technique, that the power of the Sharingan is enough to break living corpse reanimation, but you can't deny an 0-2 record against Itachi. Now, one can make the argument that Itachi was trying to make excuses so that Jiraiya would go uninjured, because Jiraiya was fundamental for making sure that Konoha was protected and that Naruto was protected, but even Kisame himself says that he would be no match for Jiraiya, and Kisame has no horse in the race, and I'd reckon that Kisame is either stronger than or exactly as strong as Orochimaru. Not to mention that Jiraiya was able to kill 3 of the Paths of Pain in the hidden range, which is actually more impressive than Naruto's battle against Pain, not only because Naruto had information about Pain from Jiraiya, but also because technically Jiraiya was fighting a stronger version of Pain. As one, Nagato hadn't fired off a massive Shirai Tensei at the beginning of their battle against Jiraiya, and 2, Nagato was closer to all of the Paths of Pain because they were battling in the hidden range, which means they had a greater access to his chakra. Not to mention that Jiraiya was able to immediately cause Pain's bull summoning to disappear after hitting it with a Rasengan. And once again, Pain said that if Jiraiya knew how the Rinnegan worked, he would have killed him. Which means Jiraiya with prep time and knowledge is stronger than Nagato, who's stronger than Itachi, who's stronger than Orochimaru. But that's with prep time and knowledge. But enough about all of that, let's get into Jiraiya's stats. Because Jiraiya is said to be on par with Orochimaru since all the Sannin can defeat each other, and was able to pierce Orochimaru's foot with his needle Jizo, and was able to bang with Naruto in his four-tail cloak long enough that he was able to seal him, it's pretty safe to assume that Jiraiya's AP, just like Orochimaru's, is island level. And this is corroborated by the fact that he was able to take out Pain's bull summoning. Now, speed-wise, considering the fact that Jiraiya was able to keep up with the Paths of Pain, Konan was said to be faster than Kisame, was able to react to a sword coming towards Naruto fast enough that he could summon a toad to block it, and was able to literally speed blitz the Deva Path so fast that it couldn't react, tied into the fact that Sage Mode makes you more agile, faster, and increases your reaction speed, it's safe to assume that Jiraiya, just like Orochimaru, is massively hypersonic plus. But what about his durability? Well, durability-wise, unfortunately, one of the best feats we have for Jiraiya is the fact that he easily withstood a kick from Might Guy. While heavily sedated and unable to manipulate chakra properly, he was able to withstand attacks from Orochimaru. Outside of this, he's able to hang with the 6 Paths of Pain. There's not necessarily a lot of moments in there where Jiraiya takes a full-on shot and tanks it without any damage. So I tend to float towards city level plus for Jiraiya's durability, but some people say that it's island level. So we'll say it's somewhere in between. Which brings us to the question of the hour. Who wins? Well, when it comes down to summonings, we've seen that Gamabunta beats Manda in a fight. When Jiraiya and Orochimaru did come to blows, their summonings weren't hindered by the fact that they were hindered. And in that fight, Gamabunta stabs Manda through the mouth and pins him to the ground. So summonings-wise, we have to believe that Jiraiya has a leg up. Now, one can make the argument that Orochimaru has access to more snakes than just Manda, and technically you're right. Though by this time, I believe Manda 1 was dead, and therefore we're talking about Manda 2. But Jiraiya, just like Naruto in his pain fight, also has access to more toads than just Gamabunta. So when it comes down to summonings, I have to give the leg up to Jiraiya. Now when it comes to attack potency, they're kind of tied. They both have similar feats against similar opponents. Orochimaru is able to hang with and stun and block attacks from the four-tailed version of Naruto, and Jiraiya is presumably able to do the same, as he was able to seal Naruto. On top of this, we did see that Orochimaru was able to go toe-to-toe with the Deva Path, at least for a little bit. And since the Akatsuki thought that Orochimaru was a threat and therefore sent people after him to kill him, it's safe to assume that Nagato thought of Orochimaru as a threat the same way they thought of Jiraiya as a threat. However, the fact that they sent Deidara might be slightly telling, because I have no hesitancy in me when I say that the only 3 people who could defeat Jiraiya in the Akatsuki were Obito, Nagato, and possibly Itachi, but Orochimaru has lost to Itachi twice. So it's a possibility that Nagato doesn't perceive Orochimaru at the same level of threat as he perceives Jiraiya. But I guess the real question in all of this is that could Itachi beat Jiraiya in a fight if he was being as serious as when he was battling against Orochimaru? We don't know. That's a different video. The reason we're talking about any of this is the fact that their AP is the same. And when it comes down to speed, it's pretty much the same, as Orochimaru in a heavily suppressed state was able to go toe-to-toe with Sasuke in his version 2 Curse Mark, while Jiraiya at full strength could hang with Nagato and Konan simultaneously. Neither of them are light speed, they're both massively over hypersonic, so it's hard to say. However, when it comes down to durability, this is where I believe Orochimaru gets a point. See, we don't know what attack Naruto used against Jiraiya to almost kill him. Now, if it was a tailed beast bomb and Jiraiya managed to tank a tailed beast bomb, then we would know his durability is higher than Orochimaru's, as Orochimaru admitted that if the tailed beast bomb hit him, he would die. Since Orochimaru was able to block the strongest attack from Naruto in his Four Tails mode, it's hard to not say that Orochimaru's durability scales higher than that of Four Tail Naruto's AP. And while the end goal of both Orochimaru and Jiraiya was different when battling against Four Tails Naruto, I can't help but feel like Orochimaru did slightly better in their battle against Four Tails Naruto because of their higher durability. Tie this into the fact that Orochimaru was able to tank not one, but 2 full power attacks from Tsunade while suppressed, while Jiraiya may not have been able to do that, and it's starting to look like Orochimaru's durability might be a little bit high. So when it comes down to durability, I have to give a point to Orochimaru, especially when you consider the fact that Orochimaru has at least 2 lives at any given point. And therefore, if Jiraiya was able to fatally wound Orochimaru, they could simply make a new body by regurgitating one out their mouth, and if possibly that second body was destroyed, they could just shoot their true form out their mouth and just be their white snake self. Tie that into the fact that the white snake self also probably has the ability to use the 8 branches technique, something that Jiraiya doesn't necessarily have a counter to, and I'd say that durability goes to Orochimaru pretty handedly. Now yes, technically, do sages have a regeneration ability? Yeah, and therefore Jiraiya in his Sage mode would have a superhuman regeneration ability. But Orochimaru also has one of those, even pre-4th Great Shinobi World War, and thus that's kind of a moot point. So all in all, that gives 1 point to Jiraiya and 1 point to Orochimaru with 2 ties. However, there is one more additional point for Jiraiya, and that's the fact that the data books rate Jiraiya at a power level of 35.5 and Orochimaru at 35. As when it comes down to stats, Jiraiya has a 5 in ninjutsu, a 4.5 in taijutsu, a 3 in genjutsu, 4.5 intelligence, 4.5 in strength, 4.5 in speed, 5 in stamina, and a 4.5 in hand seals. While Orochimaru only has a 5 in ninjutsu, a 3.5 in taijutsu, a 5 in genjutsu, a 5 in intelligence, a 3.5 in strength, a 4.5 in speed, a 3.5 in stamina, and a 5 in hand seals. Which means that while Orochimaru's genjutsu is better than Jiraiya's taijutsu is better than Orochimaru's. And when you consider the fact that Jiraiya in his Sage mode form is probably immune to genjutsu, this 2-point differential between Orochimaru's genjutsu and Jiraiya's genjutsu is all but kind of useless, especially when you consider the fact that Jiraiya, when fused with Ma and Pa, has the Toad Confrontation Chant, a technique that works on anybody regardless of how powerful they are, and those affected by it can only be released from it when they either are pierced through the heart or the user decides to release them. And thus, even though Jiraiya himself isn't a genjutsu master, he has access through the medium of Ma and Pa to one of the strongest genjutsus on Earth that Orochimaru would kind of have no answer for, as we've already seen that Orochimaru is incredibly susceptible to genjutsu from the Sharingan. Tie this into the fact that Jiraiya's stamina is a 5 and Orochimaru's is a 3.5, and genuinely, I believe in this battle, even though Orochimaru does have multiple lives, that Jiraiya wins in a battle of attrition. And whether that win state be the Toad Confrontation Chant, an Ultra Big Ball Rasengan, or even possibly Orochimaru trying to use their ability to absorb chakra from Jiraiya and turning into a stone, I believe that Jiraiya wins against this version of Orochimaru in a high diff fight. However, as soon as Orochimaru gets a White Zetsu body and all of Kabuto's abilities, my God, is it wraps for Jiraiya. What do you guys think? In this legendary battle between Sannin, who comes out on top? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, we had to give the man a win. His clone's boxing with Ishiki.